Hi, my name is Melissa Bill, and welcome to the Business Roundup, where we catch up with the movers and shakers in the business world. Today, joining me is Jonathan Leverwitz. He is an attorney, founding attorney at Leverwitz Law Firm. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, I would think we were talking a little bit before we started the call. I really, it's very interesting to me, like law in general, and especially like family law. And we were talking that it's definitely changed, the parameters and what the judges look at, throughout the years. But before we kind of dive into that, I like to let the guests kind of give a little bit of their backgrounds and how they got into, their profession. Do you mind kind of sharing your background into law?
No, I would say it was about 25, 30 years ago. I was in basically on a business track in college. And then what I did was I switched over at some point in time toward learning more about the law as a result of the fact that I started going through a divorce and a custody battle. Or a custody case. And basically what happened is as a result, I became a family law attorney. It was an excruciating process in terms of my divorce. It lasted many years, and I saw things from my perspective that my lawyers didn't necessarily see or explain to me or handle in a certain way. Therefore, as I like to tell my clients, I have sat on both sides of the desk. I have sat as a client and I have sat as an attorney. I know what
That's
they're feeling.
Exactly, and that's probably the best thing is, like, not being in their footsteps, you can't really relate to some of these things that they're going through, and I know now one of the big things is that we were talking that the changes have you seen different like, changes within what, the judges are looking at, these different types of things as far as custody, alimony?
Sure. Well, in terms of alimony, it used to be that the payer spouse paid based upon a needs based basis for paying support. Therefore, everything about alimony or spousal support was about the needs of the needy spouse, of the spouse who didn't have the money or less money. Now it's very different. Now in New York, we use a calculation. Therefore, what happens is we look at what the calculation is, and then the judge can go up or down based upon the calculation. But the calculation is the starting point, basically, for where the alimony or maintenance starts. And that's basically something that is relatively speaking new. I would say probably around 8 years, maybe 10 years old in terms of the use of the calculation. And that calculation has mutated over the years. We now have pre-divorce alimony or spousal support, post-divorce alimony slash spousal support. There are numerous factors that the court is supposed to look at, and it's very interesting the way we do it now.
And that now what about child support? Is that same thing there? Is it different than it was before?
Child support is still the same because maintenance has some impact on child support because it's deducted from your income before you pay child support. But overall, child support has been the same since the 1980s.
So pretty much the same. And now divorce, there is a difference with that where there is like where neither one is at fault. Is that there's some changes in that regard.
Absolutely. About 10 years ago, or somewhere in that range, the law changed from being a fault based system where you had to prove abandonment, constructive abandonment, adultery. Excuse me. You needed to prove a ground for divorce. Now, all you have to do is say that 6 months prior to the filing for divorce, that your marriage broke down irretrievably, that you had an irretrievable breakdown, which basically means the two of you can't get along anymore and be married. So it's a no fault state now in New York.
Okay. And that could be different depending on where you're located.
Absolutely. But most states have no fault divorces.
Okay. Sounds good. And then now what are some of the things I know now what kind of cases do you handle at your law firm?
Primarily, we handle divorces, but inside the divorce, you have lots of other topics. You have child custody if there's a custody dispute. You have contract disputes in the event that there are contracts, such as a prenuptial or a postnuptial. You have issues regarding money in terms of alimony or spousal maintenance. You've got issues in terms of um, child support, of course, domestic violence, orders of protection. I mean, these things happen in divorces all the time. Arrests and criminal law a little bit. So these things pop up all the time.
And that's like a pretty good interesting because it had changed from where I knew it to be. Now, given the situation, it used to be, I want to just like not generalize it, but it used to be mainly like many, many years ago. It was the man who had the main job and then the wife or the would be more so maybe working, but like raising the kids, that type of thing. And when they had divorce cases, a lot of times, let's say they share a house back, and I'm this is back a ways, it was normal more so for the like, if you had a divorce for the like, the wife or whoever was gonna have keep the child to remain in the house, but I don't think that's the same anymore. Are there any changes with that, or how does that usually work in a divorce case?
The law basically provides in New York that the person who ends up with the children basically should have first dibs on the house. And when I say first dibs, it's if they can afford to pay it, if it's if it's something that the other party can live without in terms of the award of what we call equitable distribution. So if there's a moneyed case and if the parties can't find, let's say, less expensive housing, which is one of the arguments that we make in many cases, because mortgages are typically still, in the 3 and 4% range, even though now they're going in the 6 and 7% range. When you're dealing with a case that where they were married 15 years ago, their mortgage rate is significantly lower. So the cost of housing is significantly lower when you go back and look at it. So there is a right to a certain extent to keep the children in their present residence. Um, but it's not guaranteed. It's up to the court, and it's up to whether the party can afford it or not. And of course, whether the other party can live without the money that is built into the house, because many people have their house as their nest egg. They're constantly pumping money into it to build it up. And instead of saving money in a IRA, 401k, or a brokerage account, they're pumping money into their house, believing it's going to generate more equity for them in terms of value.
That makes sense. So in some cases, it might be that one would have to buy the other one out or maybe sell the home.
Correct.
That makes sense. And then the other thing is, when you're talking about the impact on children, um, what are some of the things that you've seen when it comes to like, divorce and children, how they're impacted in like the custody battle? Are there any tips or things that you can provide people who are maybe looking and they're going to go forward on divorce, any of that type of thing in regards to this?
Well, the tips vary based upon whether or not you're seeking custody or you're seeking visitation or access, as it's called. The tips vary, excuse me, drastically based upon the facts of the case. There is a provision in the law that basically says that the person who has custody of the children should foster a relationship, should make the relationship better with the other parent. But most parents, unfortunately, at their own devices, basically try and some of them try and alienate, some of them basically try and pit one parent against the other. I've had cases ranging from the fact that children just won't see the other parent or deal with the other parent, to the fact that they want to go and live with the other parent because the other parent, one parent is stricter and one parent is more lenient. And children do have a voice in the court proceedings through what's called an attorney for the children, or what's known in other states sometimes as a guardian ad litem. So this other voice that comes into the picture also plays a role because they typically um, confer and explain to the court and um, basically present the opinions of the child. So the weight that the child carries in terms of the ultimate trial is one of the best interests in New York. But during the course of the proceeding, there are many times when the lawyer for the child or children will go ahead and take their own positions.
In regards to that. And now it's different depending on the age. I know there's an age where a child can like speak for themselves or have more say. What is that age? Because I know that differs in some places.
Well, I mean, Basically, in New York, I would say it's between the ages of 10 and 14 where the child really has the maximum say. After 14, it's basically what the child wants. They're going to vote with their feet. No judge is going to force a 14-year-old to do something, unfortunately, even though they probably should force the child to go and visit with the other parent, they're reluctant to do so. And they take the position that they're not going to force the child. At 10 years old, you see even children having the ability to go ahead and say, well, I want an appeal of this order. I don't want to live with my father. I don't want to live with my mother. And the children are getting voices in terms of their attorneys, in terms of what they want their attorneys to do. So that voice plays a major role in what happens in the litigation, despite what may be the best interest of the child. Because lawyers in New York for children are supposed to do what the child wants. They're supposed to advocate on behalf of the child. So the children's voices are heard in one way, but the judge is supposed to make a decision not based upon what the child wants necessarily, but based upon what is in the best interest of the child. So you kind of have a little bit of play there between judges and, of course, lawyers for children.
That makes sense. And what are some of the common issues faced within most custody battles?
The most common issues are unfortunately still domestic violence, abuse, controlling behavior, narcissistic behavior, um, self aggrandizing behavior, behavior which is basically negative in terms of the way they deal with the spouse or the child. So you have a lot of conflicting allegations. Of course, one person is going to deny, one person is going to claim. You have a lot of he said, she said in the system. And whoever's testimony is believed is what's going to rule at the end of the day.
That's true. And a lot of times there is, do you see more domestic violence and, just controlling behavior? Do you see more or less of that? Or is that, because sometimes there is true domestic violence within these situations.
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes there's absolutely abhorrent conduct. Recently I was dealing with a case where the woman was slapped, very badly abused, choked. Unfortunately, she didn't document these things. And unfortunately, many times judges ask, well, where's the proof? Where's the documentation? Thankfully, in that particular case, we had pictures and videos and we had audio recordings and we had other things that proved our case. But in many cases, you find situations where the people do not protect themselves and do not document what happened to them. And that's where you end up with the he said, she said.
That makes sense. Now, if someone was, so a lot, when you say documenting, could that even be with the police or with you have a documentation of saying that this is going on and having that background, or what would be the ways?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But the police are something that most people shy away from in domestic violence cases. They don't want to involve the police because what happens is then there's going to be an arrest. And most women are very afraid of that, especially economically dependent women. They're very afraid of what's going to happen to them and their children when they're so heavily dependent on their spouse. That's one of the reasons why the legislature added in to the maintenance laws, okay, the fact that domestic violence is now a factor.
That makes sense. And
Okay, and
also, there's the repercussions of calling because I know, people in that circumstance, the person who gets arrested is not going to be very happy when they get, out. And I think that's another big deterrent for people.
it is a very big deterrent. They're very afraid of what's going to happen. And orders of protection are nice, but they're only nice if people abide by them. I mean, it's just a horrible situation in terms of the way the system is built and the way that people still have the ability to get at you despite orders of protection. Recently, I had a situation where even though there's an order of protection, the husband or boyfriend was reaching out with old invoices demanding payment, saying, I took you on a trip, therefore you owe me this amount of money and I want you to pay this amount of money. And third party contact is not allowed. It's a violation of the order of protection. But he was still doing it because he still believes he's in control.
Of the situation, and that's the biggest that's a
Yes.
a good point to make, so it's not so much about exactly, it's more of a control thing and, that type of thing. So those now, what are some of the ways to avoid these types of conflicts, and kind of resolving them before they escalate? I know we talked about, you know, it's best if you can kind of document the situations, but what are some things that people can do with these type of conflicts?
Well, the system is built in a way where your options are basically limited in domestic violence to orders of protection, family court or criminal court, or both. You could pursue it in both courts. Um, Therefore, those are really your options. But what you have to do is you have to enforce the order that you get. If you get an order of protection and someone violates it, you call the police. It's your only option. Unfortunately, there are too many people who feel weak as a result of the abuse that they have sustained that they don't want to stand up for their rights. And then it becomes the attorney's job to kind of bolster them and explain to them, listen, you have to do this either for yourself or your children. The cycle of domestic violence has to stop.
So that's the thing. So you have to stand firm. You make that choice and you need to stand by it. So that's one way. Don't waver back and forth. You need to stick to what you've put in place.
Correct.
Okay. And then are there things people can do as far as like, now they move into the procedures and stuff like that? Do they just, are there things that other advice that the attorney might give them, either person in the relationship, or prior to the divorce or during the divorce, with when there's kids involved?
When there's kids involved, there are numerous ways of handling domestic violence. One of them is called Our Family Wizard. It's a program that you get on your iPhone or your Android phone, whatever you may have. And the program basically controls and dictates how people deal with each other. Therefore, you can cut off the abuse between the parties by simply using one of those types of apps. And Our Family Wizard is just one example. There are other companies that provide similar services. So what happens is a judge will order or the parties agree that instead of communicating via regular text message or instead of communicating by phone, especially in hotly contested cases, that they're going to use an app to go ahead and document things. That app also has features built into it that to a certain extent control the language that can be used. Okay. And people also know that it's going to be used against them. They're much more careful as to what they write in the app than what they write or just simply talk into their phones because you no longer have to type into your phone. You can just simply talk into it. And therefore, what happens is you're more careful about what you say. Text messages, unfortunately, are really the death of a custody case. And when I say that, what I mean is you just say things that are coming off of emotion. You automatically respond to them. When someone gets a text message, they typically go ahead and respond within seconds. And it's automatically an emotional knee jerk response. Therefore, it puts you in a horrible position, whether you're the custodial or non custodial parent. Text messages are a horrible thing and they should be avoided at all costs. And if you're going to send a text message, send it to your lawyer first. Put it into draft mode. Do something else to protect yourself so that you avoid the emotional issues.
That's true, and I think that's even can go for, social media messaging. People need to avoid, putting it out there, and then you can't take it back, before it's too late and it's out there and sent. So, that's a good point, just to really, take the time to think about things before you react and say anything back to the other person. And then these things now, is this something that they'd find through the court or the lawyer or the attorney? The
Typically,
my
it's through the lawyers or through the court.
Okay, sounds good.
People, for the most part, just use text messages beforehand, and they switch over to things like the programs when they get into court.
Okay, and that helps them kind of interact without having the chances of it escalating and turning into a bigger issue or fight.
Correct. It decreases tension, it decreases animosity, it decreases hostility.
And
Even
one
just the
quick question.
time period.
Excuse me?
Even just the time period. Just by waiting to read that message that comes in on the app, just by not responding, you calm down. You take a step back,
Gives it
and
time
that's
to
very
escalate.
productive. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yes.
Oh, you're good. No, it gives them time to, like, de-escalate the situation.
Yes, absolutely.
And now, are there any other changes you've seen? Like, now you have a lot more, I would say, like, husbands or, fathers who are staying home with the kids. I think a little bit more, they're like actually like the stay-at-home dad instead, the wife is working or holding down, like, have you seen changes when it comes to divorce in regards to that, how they have to look at things?
Absolutely. What you're seeing is now is you're seeing a lot more fathers receive alimony or maintenance. You're seeing a lot more fathers receive child support, and you're seeing a lot more fathers take custody of children. And that's devastating to mothers because mothers feel A, they should not have to pay child support no matter what. B, they feel that they should not have to pay alimony or maintenance no matter what. And C, they basically feel that the person is doing this just because they're nasty or obnoxious or hostile, as opposed to the fact that they are the moneyed spouse and they are the ones who are working. And these were adult choices that they made in their relationship. So it becomes a very emotionally charged situation, which judges and lawyers have to deal with in terms of saying to moms, listen, you're a hedge fund manager. You're a doctor. You're working 80 hours a week. He's been home with the kids. He gets home. He's a school teacher. He gets home at 2:30 in the afternoon. He's been doing homework with the kids for 5, 6 years now. He's the one who puts them to bed at night. You don't come home till 9, 10 o'clock at night. Therefore, it puts them in a position where they have to go ahead and they have to reevaluate the entire life that they've been living and either say, well, it's time to cut back on my hours. It's time to cut back on my job. But that causes a problem because income income is looked at from during the course of the marriage. You really can't just cut back on it as a result of the fact that you're getting divorced. So you're stuck in this between a rock and a hard place, as they would say, between the fact that you're not getting custody or you're getting less custody or you're not having the ability to pursue things. Okay. And in terms of children, in terms of being there, you know, at night, moms were used to coming home to a certain extent, the moneyed spouses, and kissing their kids goodnight and tucking them in and being there on the weekends. And they had every weekend and they had lots of time off. And they'll still get that time off, but they won't have that kiss goodnight. They won't have that time, in between. And the fathers are taking custody as a result of these new lifestyles.
That makes sense. Yeah, some changes happening. And now is your practice mainly you deal with just in like New York City?
Well, no, I deal with Nassau, Suffolk, out in Long Island. I deal with New York City. I deal with Westchester. Um, I'm primarily New York City, but I deal with other counties and other places as well.
Okay.
And if I'm called upon, I go further than that.
Okay, wonderful. Now, what would be the best way if someone wanted more information to learn more about the firm and practice? What would they just go to the website?
I would tell them to go to the website.
Okay.
Yes, it's Leveritz, LEVORITZLAW.com, leveritzlaw.com.
Okay. And they could also the contact information and just for like if they wanted to schedule a consultation, same thing.
Absolutely. Numbers are there, emails are there. We're always available, basically. We respond within 24 hours to any inquiry, and we go ahead and we're very responsive. Clients in these situations need their hands held. It's part psychology, part law. You got to hold the client's hand and you got to walk them through the process.
No, definitely, because it's probably one of the most difficult situations, that I think that anybody will go through.
Yes, it's a horrible situation. You're losing your family, you're losing your loved ones, you're losing the people closest to you. your children, your wife, your husband, your partner, your lover, your friend. You're losing these people. At the same time, they're still alive and just a few blocks away from you. So it's worse than death.
True. Yeah, very true.
When someone
Well,
passes away, they're gone.
yeah, it's different. It's definitely puts things in a whole, you have to think about things in your life in a whole new way.
Yes.
Well, I definitely appreciate
It's
you.
a thank you.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's very difficult for people.
Yes, absolutely. And I really appreciate you joining us today. It's been, definitely some things I didn't know, and I'm glad to see that there's different things being put in place to help people, especially when it comes to divorces that are a little bit, have more things involved with, abuse and different things, to help people navigate through this. So, really appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you, Melissa, for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining the Business Roundup, where we always try to bring you interviews with some of the leading people in business, whether it be technology, finance, or energy. I hope you tune in. I hope you subscribe and listen, and we'll give you updates for new interviews that are coming up. Until next time, I'm Melissa Bell.